It's wonderful, wonderful. That being rebuked and being scorned is probably part of the essence of race relations, that we can't doubt what African Americans have gone through in this world, and we can't doubt that sometimes when white liberals try to get involved that we get buked and scorned because we just kind of step in things the wrong way sometimes. One of the difficulties in race relations is that good intentions are often not enough to make the difference. People of goodwill can often clash with each other. The goal of racial harmony is sometimes elusive. And the Unitarian Universalists experienced this during the late 60s. Immediately after the racial violence in Newark and Detroit in the summer of 67, the Unitarian Universalist Commission on Religion and Race convened an emergency conference on the Unitarian Universalist response to the Black Rebellion. This conference was held in New York in 1967. The chief event of the 67 conference was the formation of the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus, which was an attempt on the part of black participants in the conference to set their own priorities and goals. This caucus led to the formation of the Black Affairs Council, a committee which served as a coordinating agency for Unitarian Universalist efforts in the field of race relations and black empowerment. Full recognition and funding for the Black Affairs Council was a white support group formed in 1968, which supported the full funding of the Black Affairs Council. Some Unitarian Universalists felt that the direction of the Black Affairs Council was too separatist, and a group called Black and White Action, or BAWA, was formed in 1968 to provide a channel for the efforts of some Unitarian Universalists to achieve racial justice through a more integrated means. Through all the acronyms, the whole process raises the question, what is the best way to help? Do you stand aside and support people in the decisions they make? Or do you help people make decisions? Some argued that the standing aside was a withholding of resources. Others suggested that getting more involved was patronizing. I mean, which whites in this struggle were more patronizing? Those involved in fullback or those involved in BAWA? Betty Seaton, a BAWA leader with African American, she said she resented fullback intervention, telling the new group, "You say that we blacks are supposed to be off getting ourselves equal to you. I feel equal right now. Can you see how insulted I am that you are going to give me self-empowerment?" For the next 4 years, the UUA fought over which group to fund, whether we should fund one, none, or both. And after 4 years of contention and dissension, people were leaving the denomination, and there was soon no money to fund either. Bill Sinkford, our current president of the UUA, left the denomination at this time. As a black man, he wondered if his liberal religious tradition had room for him. And we can read the history of this controversy online, and when this sermon appears online, you'll see references to go to, or read books such as The Long Challenge, The Empowerment Controversy. But we have the benefit of knowing someone who was there when it all went down. And I invite George Briggs, our emeritus minister, to give a firsthand account of the racial empowerment controversy.
Thank you, Charlie. This was not only a time of racial strife, it was also the time of the Vietnam War. And all of this struggle together formed the context in which our General Assemblies met. The events we are recalling today took place half of my life ago. About 2 months short of my 39th birthday, I served a small UU congregation in Pittsfield, Maine. General Assembly was in Boston that year, 1969, in a Sheraton hotel. 2 years earlier, in 1967, not yet a fellowship minister, I had attended my first General Assembly in Denver. Saul Alinsky was a major speaker that year, and UUs heard his message of confrontation. In 1968, General Assembly was in Cleveland. Although I was a fellowshipped UU minister by that time, I did not yet have a parish. So I attended General Assembly in Cleveland as a lay delegate from the First Unitarian Church of Berkeley, California, where Elise and I were members. Confrontation characterized the atmosphere at Cleveland in 1968. All of us fed ourselves on a diet of alphabet soup. Buck, Bach, Thodak, Bawa. Bawa was the group with which I identified, Black and White Action. Betty Seiden, a friend of ours from the Berkeley Church, was co-chair of Bawa. An African-American woman, Betty was our daughter's first Sunday school teacher. One more personal note regarding the minister who stuck his face in mine while I was voting. He was much older than I, and I never saw him again. However, more than 20 years later, I served as interim minister of a church where he had served as minister for many years. He was not my immediate predecessor, but had preceded my predecessor. His widow was still an active member of the congregation during the year we were there. She and Elise and I became warm friends.
Thank you, George. It is very difficult to negotiate the landscape of race in this country. There's so much history, there's so much pain, and there's a desire to put the past behind us and look towards the future, as if singing "We Shall Overcome" will carry us to the day where we have overcome. Some prefer not to bring up racism at all. Perhaps if we do not speak about it, it'll cease to exist. Anyone who mentions race nowadays is accused of playing the race card. And it seems that playing the race card has more stigma nowadays than actually being racist. See, I have this vision whenever I hear that phrase of 4 people sitting at a table playing cards, and each afraid that they're about to play the race card. And the first plays a jack of diamond, and someone accuses them that they're making a stereotypical reference to bling bling. But he defends himself. He says, "No, the diamond is red. It's a blood diamond, and I'm in solidarity with the miners in South Africa." The second player plays the 2 of hearts. Someone notes that it represents Virginia versus Loving, the Supreme Court decision that allowed interracial marriage. And she says, no, it represents the gay marriage rights, which has nothing to do with racism, even though the same Bible and the same laws are being used now to prevent gay marriage that were used to prevent interracial marriage 40 years ago. The next player lays down the 10 of clubs, and surely he has played the race card. The club is violent, and why is it colored black? And he defends himself by saying, "I'm Irish, and they're shamrocks." And they're black because I'm black Irish. The one's descended from the Spaniards instead of the Norwegians. But the next player plays the ace of spades. Surely she has played the race card, and she denies the saying that her father was a farmer and used a spade to dig in the garden. And these players are arguing, and they're wondering who played the race card, and they fail to notice that the tablecloth is made of cotton that was picked by slaves. They fail to notice that it's a table where for years blacks were forbidden to sit, and that the table stands upon ground that's stolen from Native Americans. While bickering over small and insignificant games, they fail to recognize that the whole structure around them is based on racism. There is an intentional blindness that becomes habitual. What is white is relabeled as normal and fades into the background. But the background is the context in which we live. It's the stage on which we stand. We may think we're improvising our lines, but we are actually reciting scripts that were written long, long ago. We do not have the luxury of saying, well, that's just the way it is. Because things are the way they are because somebody decided that's the way it should be. The suburbs did not become whiter than the inner cities by accident. It was intentional decisions that established segregation. The rise of private and parochial schools after Brown versus the Board of Education is not an accident. The rise of homeschooling after they actually started enforcing integration is not an accident. White people decided to reallocate their resources. A tax law that taxes wages more than inheritance is not an accident. It's not just happenstance that wage workers are more likely to be black or brown, while trust fund babies are more likely to be white. Contrary to popular opinion, pointing out that racism exists is not playing the race card. It's merely telling the truth. I think the race card is the joker, the false smile we put on everything when we want to pretend that things are okay. The race card is played when we turn the deck face down and pretend that all the cards are valued equally. When we pretend that we do not see color or gender or any other of the distinctions that we face every day. The race card is the joker that blinds us to reality, that makes us smile comfortably at the status quo. An example of that blindness happened again at the 1993 General Assembly. It was held in Charlotte, in our very own Thomas Jefferson District. Someone decided that it would be fun to have a costume ball where everybody dressed as they did in colonial times. A black person asked, "Should I come in chains?" People were surprised. The white people had not intended any offense, and they would have been more comfortable if the black person had not spoken up. So who played the race card? Those who noticed that there was something wrong, or those who wanted to keep on smiling? This issue is a growing issue for both races in our district as we struggle with what it is meant to name a district after Thomas Jefferson, honoring him for his religious liberalism, while at the same time being appalled as what he did as a slaveholder. And that's just one of the issues that we're dealing with at the upcoming Anti-Racism Conference. In their keynote address, Reverends Barbara Hanson and Hope Johnson will share their individual perspectives on that story of the Thomas Jefferson costume ball. And they'll speak about the emotions, the bewilderment, the pain, the anger, confusion, and distrust that are part of the controversy and still lingers in our district when we go to district meetings. You can hear the announcement. The tension just rises. It's like, why are we still named Thomas Jefferson? Next district meeting you go, just say that and see how the person reacts. Oh no, please not another fight. But in this workshop, we'll be asked to kind of uncover it again and look at it and say, what does it mean? And conflict is not always to be avoided. Conflict offers opportunity. Among the good things that came out of the controversy for Hope and Barbara was the intimate way in which they connected with each other and the lasting friendship that ensues to this day. We can move forward. It's important to look at our history. It allows us to move forward and hopefully not make the same mistakes again. The theme of this anti-racism conference is anti-racist action. It seems we keep on talking about race and we just need to do something, and sometimes it's just tempted to, let's just go and do something. But sometimes it is hard to act without the reflection. Because sometimes when whites try to help, we step on people's toes or into something worse. Because we are often blind to the assumptions we carry in race relations. Uninvited help is not always welcome, and sometimes we may need to listen rather than assume the lead. It's my hope that the Anti-Racism Conference here will be the beginning of the process that helps this congregation look at these things. Many congregations have a standing anti-racism task force, just in the same way that we have a standing committee that keeps us mindful of gay, lesbian, and bisexual and transgender concerns. Because it's comfortable to let this stuff fade into the background, to be white, to be transparent, so we don't see it, and then we can pretend it isn't there. It's not always pleasant to do anti-racism work. It's not always pleasant to exercise, but it's important to exercise. Exercise that will make us more fit to enter into cooperative relationships with all people. May we bless and be blessed.